So remember, these are all the systems that we're looking to go through. So remember, I told you there's a checklist that we go through.
Yes.
So let me just go through, here's the big categories. Of course, the chiropractic freedom, the 9 wealth strategies. So the big picture is how to maximize your for-profit centers in your office. That's your business. How to buy your own home. If you haven't done that yet, that's with owner financing. If you have bad credit or other issues, you can still get into a home. How to buy your office. And remember, those two things you always want to do as fast as you can because you're already paying for them.
Right.
And when you buy them, it'll be less. A mortgage payment is always less than a rent payment. Fully fund your IRA because it's 100% tax deductible. How to hire, train, and manage associate doctors or multiple offices. And then, of course, how to invest in real estate, owner financing, no mortgages. And then the tax deductible lifestyle, you got to know all the basics about tax deductions. We talked about that. The important and asset protection. So those are the big categories that we cover. And then when we go into your office, so these are the topics. These are the major topics, or the 7 departments of running a business. Number 1, the CEO making the decisions. There's a financial department, human resources department. There's quality control, services, technical, and marketing. Now, if you pay attention to this, it helps you to segment. Because remember, we go to school being a chiropractor, so the only thing we really ever think about is number 5, the service factor.
Right.
It's chiropractic. Okay, so you have to learn how to do all these other components. And getting business and keeping business has nothing to do with service. You'll lose business with bad service, but good service is not what going to get you business. That's marketing. And same with patient retention. That's marketing. So it helps kind of to step back because it helps to stop being inundated from only thinking about treating.
Yes.
Remember, that's the easiest part of running your business is treating.
Yes.
Okay, learning how to implement the for-profit centers. So the business, retention, the fees you charge, and overhead. Those are the 4 categories that we cover. That's going to that determines your profitability in exchange of time for money. And remember, exchanging of time for money is the lowest form of making money. Only 1% of millionaires become millionaires exchanging time for money. 14% from leveraging money and 85% from leveraging time. That's why associate doctors in real estate become so important, because that's 99% of where people become millionaires, not from going to work. But you have to learn the components of going to work to be able to leverage up. In other words, if you didn't know this, you would never be able to leverage it into leveraging time through associate doctors. So the office systems I go into, whether it's office location, optimal patient flow, office layouts, we talked about all those, staff interactions with the 10 unique visits, therapeutic protocols. We talked about the importance of that relative to your patient education, answering the phone, how to provide necessary documentation. We go into all the documentation. And then, of course, we go on how to give depositions or trial testimony. Human resources and staffing. This is a big one. It's the second most important reason that you'll be successful in practice after you. Your people.
Yeah.
How good are you at picking people and training and managing people? That's not easy.
No.
So, but that's what's going to determine, your ability to process and especially grow business. So that's why, we spend a lot of time in the understanding how to hire people and who to hire and who not to hire, and then how to train them. But that's everything. You hire the wrong person, you just created a nightmare. And it takes you a while to figure that out. You pretty much can't train somebody when they don't have, the right components, whether it's personality or attitude or value system. It's like hitting your head against a brick.
Mhm.
And of course, if you do pick the right person, it just makes it so much more easier. And the right person, when I say right, I'm talking about the major components of personality, value system, responsibility, attitude. Those are the big components. They're not easy to find. So that's why I say you gotta know how to steal. That's why I talk about, you gotta know how to steal employees. And you gotta know how to identify them. Do I have a good person here or not? Based on those factors. That's what's going to determine your growth. And then, of course, you treat them right, you train them well. We talked about the 4 stages of training and the benefits, and because you want them to stick around. When you get a good person, you want to stick around because they're a major anchor to your business. As an example, you can do so much, by yourself. That gets to be limited pretty hard. Then you take on your first employee, say answering the phone or putting people on and off therapy. So that's not too big of a deal. But a really big one is when you hire your therapist, your chiropractic assistant that's going to help you with therapy. And the reason that one is so big is because that's the person that's going to anchor your marketing. Now, if it was just therapy, doing passive therapy, that's easy. But as soon as you have them move into marketing, that's a whole nother type of person. And that person is major because that's the anchor. That's the marketing anchor. And they're the ones because they're always around all the patients. So they're the anchor, I trained my staff how to get referrals. I did it first because I had to know how to do it and all that and get good at it. But all these marketing systems that we have, the staff was trained in how to do it. And the main marketing therapist was the marketing. And she was the one that was trained real well in how to do it. And so we always had new business being created while I wasn't doing it. Somebody else was doing it. Well, you don't have somebody else doing it right now, and you're not doing it. Fortunately, you're seeing enough new patients, but you'd be in real trouble if you did not have a marketing system right now. You'd be in real trouble. And of course, you always want to increase the quality of your patients and move away from cold calls and more into high referrals because they're easier, they stay, pay, and you can charge more. So you want to shift the quality of your patients. And that's marketing. That's not just random, take whoever comes in. Okay, anyway, how to evaluate the 7 categories, determine growth limits. So we always are going to pay attention to these 7 categories because this is why you're not going to grow. It's going to be one of these problems, one of these, or a combination thereof, and one of them is always going to be the main problem that's going to limit your growth. And there's 5 stages of growth. And each one of these problems, space, labor, equipment, knowledge, skill, motivation, staff, management systems, it's going to be one of those systems that's going to stop you from growing at one of the 5 levels of growth. So there's 5 stages of growth from starting a practice to you not practicing and managing a practice. One of those is going to be the overwhelming big issue. And that's why you have to know how to you have to keep your stats. You got to know how to interpret your stats. You got to be able to do a breakdown analysis because the first thing you have to do is be able to identify the damn problem before you start going into solution mode. Okay, how many times did I stop you guys and go, whoa, 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 you're running off in the solution? I'm going, wait a minute, let's just identify the problem first.
Right, correct.
So the 10 categories of staff meetings, and this is the single most important vital thing you will do in your practice. It's everything. It's where you're going, it's where you're at, finds problems, eliminates problems, organizes things. It's everything. And then the 7 topics I always go into, these are the topics you should teach every chiropractic assistant. There's conviction. They should always know about the 3 phases of healing: personal experience, patient experience, confrontation with need, time, money, role-playing micro steps, 3 phases of healing, the difference between chiropractic and medical providers relative to the 3 phases of healing. They should know about the Wilk MAA case, the role of medications, and subluxations. These are the 10 categories, the 7 categories every chiropractic assistant should know. It has to do with by creating a value system. It has to do with motivation, conviction, understanding. That's what creates value with your employees, and a belief system in what they're doing. 10 factors that create chiropractic assistant warriors. So this is talking about the importance of understanding personality. First, the single most important reason that's important is for you. You've got to understand your personality, because you always want to maximize your strengths and hire to your weaknesses. Personality. And then number 2 is how to interact with the patient. And then number 3 is how to hire. So this is real important. You got to be a black belt in understanding personalities. I mean, we just did a session yesterday. We did a patient analysis breakdown, and remember, we found out essentially 3 components with a patient.
Mhm.
When we evaluate the patient's personality, number 1, we found out if they were the likely decision maker or not, and how important that is. Number 2, it taught us how to talk to that particular patient. And number 3, it told us what the likelihood of getting their spouse is as a patient. All that information just from looking at the patient, at their hygiene and how they were dressed, and the jewelry they were wearing, and how they talked. That makes your life a hell of a lot easier, is what it does. When you know this, when you know all this stuff, business is easier, everything's easier, and you're way more successful when you know this stuff. Okay, so we talked about personal motivation relative to employees, background, the stages of training are unbelievably important. Job responsibilities, primary, secondary, and tertiary, understanding that. Understanding how to give bonuses, understand the difference between benefits and bonuses. 2 most common CA problems: minimum expectation of results, showing the potential, quantify work, and you tie it all together. So these are major components relative to staffing. Then we go into the 4 stages of learning and training. Of course, the training stages, we've got to be highly aware of this and how to move our staff through one stage to the next. And the very first person you need to know it for is you. I personally, every time I want to learn something, this is what I turn to. I already know I'm going to take myself through those stages because I know how. And because I know how to do that, there's pretty much nothing that stops me. I know I can pretty much do anything because I understand those concepts and I'm going to apply them. How to get from one stage to the next, how to hire, train, and manage associate doctors. Of course, that's a big one. Going to the different types of associate doctors, the different types of business models, how to structure benefits, how to interview, how to hire, how to manage associate doctors. Of course, your life changes forever once you know how to do that. I mean, like, I always say, there's some things are really big ticket items. So when you go to the first level of exchanging time for money, what's the big ticket items? Patient education, knowing how to keep patients. What's the next big ticket item? Educational sales, knowing how to get new patients. Now that comes in two categories, whether it's one-on-one or in a group setting, knowing how to give a presentation, a sales presentation, or one-on-one. That's called getting a referral. That's huge. And then the next one is personal injury attorney, educational sales. Those four categories right there are the single four biggest components in exchanging time for money. And then you go to the associate doctors, the next level up, the big ticket items. Well, there's 7 different types of business models. It's based on five different major components. And that's what we look for in the interview to increase the effectiveness of how it works. And that changes your life again forever. Just like when you know patient education, look how much patient education's changed your life.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the next thing that's going to change your life is knowing educational sales.
Mm-hmm.
When you actually know how to get new patients. And then the next thing is when you know personal injury attorney sales. That's going to change. These are all major step ups. They're not little rinky dink stuff. And you got to be aware of it. You got to know it. It's going to take more effort. It's going to take more knowledge, more skill, but they're going to radically change your life because it's pretty significant life change when you increase your income $100,000 or more a year. That totally changes the quality, the house you live in, whether your kids go to a private school or not, what school district they go to, the restaurants you eat out, how often you eat out, the trips you go to, it changes everything. Okay, so, and then of course the big enchilada at the end there is how to open multiple offices when you have the associates. And there's, again, 7 different business models. And some are more preferable to others. Some doctors have more affinity to others. But this is when we start going into wealth, not making an income. This is when we start creating passive sources of income. And then, of course, going into the real estate. And now we're talking about wealth. And so this is the flow chart.
Yeah.
Of our consulting. And that's how we move you from exchanging time for money to leveraging your time and money to creating wealth and freedom. This is it. And I say, if you're really aggressive, you can do it in 18 months. If you're aggressive and focused and all that. And if not, it's pretty comfortable to do in 36 months. You can still go through all of these cycles at the end of 36 months. And ultimately, what does that mean? It means essentially not working, managing, not actually practicing, managing your associate doctors or offices and buying your real estate. Now you become a manager business owner and you got a lot of freedom, you got a lot of passive income, and you're creating wealth. That's the end goal.
Yep.
So I just wanted to share that with you. Now let's go to what I wanted to do today is sharing is okay. Let me show you the next one here.
Have you sent that out before? I think we have that.
Yeah, we have
probably.
it.
We have that. Yes, I thought we did. So we just gotta go through it and check. All right, where we at?
You just got to remind you're on this path.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this all the time. I said, you don't have to be running at breakneck speed. But what you don't want to do, remember, I don't know if you caught me saying this the other day. What you don't want to do, let me get this up here. Let me see. Okay. What you do not want to do, and you want to think of this as your parameter. Every quarter, every 3 months,
Yes.
you should either be putting a system in place that's going to increase your income the next quarter,
Yes.
or you should have increased your income from something you put in the previous quarter.
Yes.
Right.
That's the criteria. If you didn't do 1 or 2 of those, if your income did not increase, or you just wasted a quarter.
Yeah.
And then once you get 2 or 3 of those together, you've just stagnated. You've just gone another, 6, 9, 12 months and just totally have stagnated. And of course, the bad news about that is that's when it becomes habit.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you so you got to be real careful about where you're at and being willing to acknowledge where you're at and take responsibility for where you're at and not deny it.
Right.
I've got several clients that have been stuck for a year. They don't do one thing. Doesn't matter how much I beg and plead. It doesn't matter. They don't do it.
Right.
And then it's one quarter after the next, and a year later, it's the same shit.
Mhm.
Don't get caught into that.
Well, I know being with you, we had pretty good outcome end of the year. We got all those PIs, done and
But we haven't even started on PI.
yeah, we haven't started. I'm just talking about stuff we've done in the past, it's like implementing
Well,
stuff.
remember, if you don't have the foundation, we spent all this time working on your foundation.
That's right.
And that still got cracks in there.
You don't have a foundation, you can't start layering it.
Right.
So yeah, you needed your office flow.
Yep.
You needed to know how to move people out of a treatment room. You needed to know how to move people through the therapy room. You needed to have your layout right so people could move in and out with nobody waiting. You had to know the 10 interactions, and all the staff had to be trained in it so everybody can move without talking to anybody.
Yeah.
That's the core.
Yeah, that's the problem with it.
And then you had to have enough of it so you could see the number of patients you wanted to see, and nobody's waiting at a particular station during industrial hours.
Right.
Because if you don't have any of that, you can't grow.
Can't grow.
So that's where we spent a lot of time, is getting all that straightened out. So look back at, those things and go, do we have any major issues with any of these, or is everything are all the flows moving? In other words, the phone, moving the patients through day 1 through 10, moving them in and out for adjustments, moving them out for therapies, having the therapies you want, with relative to your patient education, get shit out of the way that doesn't need to be in the way. Okay. Or you can't just keep piling stuff on it. It won't work. All right. So let me introduce you to the marketing.
Oh, wow.
So the big picture marketing,
Okay. Video.
these are the categories. You got to be aware of these categories, because remember, we all have limited time or money for marketing. Doesn't matter who you are. You got to know what's more effective and what's least effective and why. And then you need to choose what you're going to do. You don't want to do 101 marketing systems.
Okay.
So here's what works and what doesn't work, and how and why in a chiropractic office relative to marketing. When 8% of the population is looking for a chiropractor,
Yeah.
they will go into these 5 areas first. They'll ask a trusted source first. In other words, all your patients, your existing patients and past patients, they have a circle of influence of 7 people: mother, father, brother, sister, son, daughter. Okay. When any of those people have a problem and they're looking for a chiropractor, that's what they'll do. They'll ask, hey, do you know of an optometrist? Do you know of a chiropractor? Do you know of that's where everybody goes first in every industry.
Yeah.
So do you have a marketing system to help bring those people in? Well, that's why we do the patient video newsletter.
Okay.
This is why this is the number one reason you always want to have a system in place
I like that.
that is always taught once a week, that's always talking to your existing and past patients. And
Okay.
when I say talking to, there's an outline. In other words, we're only going to talk about gateways. We're not going to talk about chemtrails.
Right.
We're going to talk about the stuff why people come in that pays your mortgage.
Right.
So, and then there's the advertising formula of, pleasure, logic, fear, and if you wanted to do an offer. So you got to know some of the basics of this. There's some order to this.
Yes.
Okay. And then we always talk about systems. There's a person in place. And of course, we cover how to do all this.
Okay.
But anyway, that's number one. Number two is they'll go and Google their insurance to see what doctor's on their insurance. It's local. That's why we do the insurance videos. They'll do Google for business. They'll Google chiropractor and then your location. Well, that's a system, how that works. They'll Google their condition. That's why we have condition videos. And they're very specific. They follow the advertising formula. There's 14 emotional triggers. You got to be aware of these emotional triggers. And then your sign. Some of the pros and cons relative to different types of sign and how to use your sign and your to the best of your ability relative to the laws in your city. Okay, that's where the 8% go. If you're not in any of these categories, you're not going to get any of these people. Okay. All right. Now, that's not a big market, but that's an easy market because they're already looking for a patient. And none of this stuff here costs very much. And it doesn't take much labor. So it's well worth doing because it doesn't take much labor, doesn't cost very much. And it's the easiest business because patients are already looking for a chiropractor. There's already a need established. So you're just trying to get more than your competition. That's all.
Yeah.
So it's like icing on the cake. It's not the cake. It's like, why not get a few extra patients for free?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Then you go to the big enchilada. And this is introduction marketing combined with educational sales. Now, there's different categories here, but the bottom line is the most effective, the weakest marketing is what's called cold call marketing. You can expect like 1% effectiveness. Passive referrals are 7%. That's why you can't wait around for passive referrals. 15% are leads. And the reason leads are higher is because a lead is somebody who has a gateway, who has a gateway, back pain, neck pain. That's why it's higher than a cold call. And then 55% can be from what's called active referrals. In other words, you knowing what to say to get a referral. 75% is when you combine, 75% effectiveness is when you combine introduction marketing with educational sales. So what is introduction marketing? Introduction marketing is starting from the inner circle of influence to outer. Because we already have trust. Remember, there's 4 categories to the component of marketing. Need equals money times time divided by trust. So if I start with the inner circle, I'm already overcoming the trust issue of the formula. And it's real easy to find out if they have a gateway. So I already know if they have some kind of need or not to some degree. Well, I'm already light years ahead in the marketing game if there's already trust there and there's a need to some degree. I'm light years ahead as opposed to doing a cold call ad. And then we use educational sales. So we start with the circle of influence, inner to outer. And then we use the, you can use publicity, advertising, or educational sales. And I cover this in great detail. But publicity and advertising won't establish need. So it's only going to work for the 8% that are looking.
Right.
Educational sales establishes need and it minimizes the obstacles of time or money. That's why it's the best. And that's why it's the only marketing system that'll attract the 92 out of the 92% of the population who's not looking for a chiropractor. 3 out of 4 of those people have a chiropractic problem to some degree. They're just not looking for a chiropractor.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's 68% of the population versus 8%.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I say educational sales is huge. It's not even compared but it's a knowledge and skill base. You got to know how to do it. You got to know how it works. You don't have to know much about advertising. You can hire somebody else to do your advertising. You don't even have to know anything, but it doesn't work very well. So that's what creates unlimited new patients is educational sales, not advertising. And then, of course, once you know how to keep them,
Mhm.
now you get full real fast. You don't need a whole lot of new patients now. That's the 1-2 punch of being successful in chiropractic right there. Okay, so that's why spouse is always number one. We have a system that's specifically for the spouse. That's why kids are number two. That's the highest circle of influence right there.
Yep.
And then we'll have an active referral system. And well, when we do that, we're still going to use educational sales, and we're still going to go to the inner to outer circle of influence. That's why we'll have reactivations. Reactivations are some of the easier patients because they already know, like, and trust you. Monthly in-office promotions. That's just getting a few new patients every month tied to a national event. And guess what? We use educational sales with circle of influence. So you don't have to learn 9 new systems to do educational sales. You just got to learn one, and then we apply it in 9 different ways.
Yeah. Right.
Monthly in-office promotion. We talked the new patient orientation. I already talked about that's number one. That's number one. They're already feeling better. They know, like, and trust you. They've been there by 6 to 9 visits because it's every 2 weeks. So they're feeling better. They're doing better. They know, like, and trust you. And then we do a sales present, which is the best. And then we go for the highest circle of influence, which is the best. It's the combination of everything that's the best. And it's free. This is free new patients right there. But you have to have knowledge and skill to do it. So this is every 2 weeks. That's why we do this every 2 weeks. And then this is a big one, knowing how to do a sales presentation to a group. Now, the VIP is the best. The high trust, it can be a combination of high trust and cold call, or it can be just cold call. Obviously, the trust is the higher. But when you apply educational sales to it, that's when you get large amounts of new patients. This is how I always say, if you want to increase your practice fast, or if you bring on an associate doctor and you want to fill them up fast, that's it. Know how to do a sales presentation to a group of people. And the easiest ones to do is to do an educational sales presentation, like a dinner talk, do a free dinner talk. And if you did it to, 10, 20 people, you'll get 70% of them as new patients. And none of them had planned on going to a chiropractor. That's the power. That's if you really want to take off. All my doctors were required to learn how to do it, and they were required to do it before they left my office. So I knew they know how to get new patients no matter if the marketing worked or not. And they were required to know how to keep patients with patient education. If they knew how to get new patients with educational sales and they knew how to keep them, it didn't matter what marketing worked or did not work. I knew they were going to be successful. That's why I never had an office fail. If a doctor could not do that, he was not allowed to leave. And of course, the personal injury attorney, educational sales, that's the big one. That's not only new patients, but now you're talking about increasing, doubling or tripling your dollar per visit. And then the local emergency room, educational sales. So this is, again, new patients with a higher dollar per visit. So this is when you're at your best. You're keeping patients, you know how to get them, and you got a high dollar per visit. And then, of course, when you know how to bring in associate doctors, now you've got passive income with a high dollar per visit. And then, so this is called introduction marketing with educational sales. That's what that's called. That's the most effective right there. These are your internet marketing systems, insurance videos, Google, Yelp, condition videos, brand name search with pay-per-click, website retargeting with banner ads, and landing pages, and Facebook. So we go over all these in detail. Pick out the ones you want to do. The number one that everybody always should do is that one right there. That's a new patient waiting right there. When you got a new patient, Google and chiropractor location, You want to pay for that. You want to own it. You want to be right there. And we go into how to do all this. Okay, then you get into, these are the least effective, mostly cold call marketing. Worst marketing you should never do. You always, after fulfilling the first two marketing categories, cold call, no perceived need. So if you're going to do the worst marketing, this is the worst marketing you would do. It's cold call and it costs money. And then, of course, the other worst market, now you don't even know if there's a need. With these, you don't even know if there's a need. With these, there's a need here, or they wouldn't be Googling it. There's a need here, or they wouldn't be looking for it. Here, there's not a need, but it's very highly defined. And the same with this. This is real highly defined. So we go into these types of marketing, and then this is what you fill your calendar with. So do you have to do all of them? No. But again, once you learn educational sales, you can apply that to 7 different systems. So you only have to learn one to apply it to 7 different, say. And when you're really talking about marketing, you're talking about either publicity, advertising, or educational sales. And then you're talking about either one-on-one, how to do educational sales to get that person in, or their circle of influence. That's a referral. That's sales. Number 2 is in a group setting, how to do a presentation to several people and get them as patients or their family members as patients. Number 3 is personal injury attorney educational sales. Those are the sales systems. Those are the big enchiladas. This is where we're headed.
Okay.
So, right, this is where we should be heading this year.
That's
So
right.
you should be looking back and go, did we check off, or are we up to snuff at least 80% with answering the phone, with the flow, the 10 unique visits of people walking in and out and everybody knowing what to say, of what to say in the room to move a patient through a regular visit, how to do the re-exam or the re-report, how to do the patient education, and where are you with your effectiveness with the patient education? Do you have enough stations so during industrial hours nobody has to wait? Everybody can still move through your office. That's the core. So you should look back and go, okay, are we pretty good with the core? And I would look at it like an 80% rule. If you're not at least 80%, then I'd go back and fix whatever you need, whatever system that you needed to, that's not at 80%. You better jump on it fast, because you can't go to the next level and start piling stuff on if you don't even have the base.
Right. Yep.
And now what we need to do is start with what we should be doing is starting with the new patients and bringing them in and putting them into your system that you already have covered. You should already have your base covered. Now we want to start paying attention to new patients, increasing the quality and dollar per visit of new patients, to start maximizing yourself out. And as soon as you do that, we move right into the associate doctors. So the big ticket items this year are educational sales, learning how to do that, personal injury, learning personal injury, and associate doctors. Those are the big 3 ticket items this year.
Big tickets.
Yep.